You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we challenge the status quo of the food industry, celebrate good food founders who are building businesses on their own terms, introduce industry disruptors, and are redefining equitability. If you're ready to build your financial confidence and join the good food revolution to change the way the food industry does business, you are in the right place. I'm the Good Food CFO and your host, Sarah Delavan. Food tech founder and designer Percy Swint has worked for some of the biggest tech companies, including Rocket Mortgage, Compass Real Estate, and Intuit. But his favorite client of all would come to be his wife. She's also the inspiration for his current venture. Percy and his wife operated a gourmet dessert business, and some of the hardships they faced there brought about the launch of Prophit, his web-based software for food and beverage manufacturers that helps track product costs and inventory, two fundamental elements of building a profitable food business. Today on the podcast, Percy and I chat about how the idea for Prophit came to be, its journey from spreadsheet to web-based tool, how food founders have been at the center of what Prophit does from day one, and of course, how it works. Percy also has an exciting offer for our listeners and will be joining us inside the Good Food CFO community. So make sure you stick around to the very end for all the details. Let's get to it. Hey, Percy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sarah. So excited to be here on the podcast today.
So I am really excited to talk about what you've released into the world, Prophit, because as a former buyer and current CFO, data, cost analysis, tracking inventory, all of these things are so exciting to me. And I'm so glad that there's a new tool that's really designed for producers, which is really exciting. But before we dive into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about your background, because like so many people who have found their way into food and food tech, you didn't start your career in this industry. You actually started it in something completely different. So can you share a little bit about your journey with us?
Yes, definitely. I've told this story a number of times. People always ask me, what is your background? How did you get into calculating your numbers for food and beverage products? And when I tell them that I actually started in landscape design, they're just like, how did you end up here? But I've been working in the tech industry for the past 4 or 5 years. And what I've found is that a lot of people have not taken that traditional path to get into technology. But yes, I started at Penn State University doing landscape design. My first love was just architecture design, but once discovering that I could not start landscape design and then go to architecture design for my master's because of student loans work, I decided that wasn't a wise move. So I decided to stick to working on that craft that I learned in school, but it was very tough to find something in that industry coming out of Penn State. Long story short, I moved to California in 2013, where I did get to practice some of that by working with a small landscape design firm in Studio City. And that was pretty awesome, but I also needed to find some other work to make ends meet. And what I did actually was start my own graphic design firm. And I just started posting on Craigslist and getting clients by word of mouth. This was like a gateway into being a professional graphic designer, to the point where I went from being a freelance graphic designer. And when I say graphic designer, that can mean anything. There's pretty much anything that you can design that's digital. So that included website design, banners, flyers, product catalogs. So being a freelancer, that built up my portfolio to the point where actually a manufacturing company, not food manufacturing. So they manufactured doorways, but they were fiberglass. So it wasn't your typical wood products. I worked there for about 2 years, and that really just helped me hone in my craft. And one of the biggest skills that I learned while working there is working with the sales team. So what the sales team was responsible for was bringing distributors into the doors. So this was clients like Home Depot, Home Goods, anyone who sold doors at a mass scale. So what I had to do was say, okay, here's your product catalog you've been using years prior before me joining this company. You have tasked me with designing and improving this catalog. So how do I do that? The best thing I can do is talk to the sales team and say, hey, how do your customers use this catalog? And how do you use this to sell your customers? So what I learned very quickly is that it didn't fulfill all the needs of the salesperson. And really, my customer is the sales guy, right?
Yeah.
Although our customers are, Home Depot, et cetera. So after like getting that feedback, understanding how they sell their products, what the customer is looking for, I know exactly what I needed to do to the catalog. So after designing this, I think it was 300 to 400 pages. So it was a huge catalog that included all of our products, the specifications, the pricing. So that was my first, I would say, introduction into how tech works. How do I understand the customer? In this case, with Profit, the customer is the food and beverage entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. How do I understand their needs and their pains? And then how do I deliver something that is actually valuable? Not to get too ahead of myself. So I worked in the graphic design industry for about 6 years at that time. One of my clients actually happened to be or would become my wife. She actually had her own gourmet dessert business where her clients were gourmet cafes, restaurants. So not so much grocery. We kind of stayed away from that at first, only because it was very difficult to break into the grocery stores. Mm-hmm. But we just found out that our customers were more in the restaurant cafe space that had like display cases, whether it was baked goods or other desserts that they wanted to display on their menu. I was still working at this fiberglass manufacturing company for a bit while I was helping her out. Since she was no longer my client, she became my girlfriend at the time. I decided in 2017 to actually leave my job to join her full time and helping her grow and scale her dessert business because I had so much confidence in what she was doing. As I mentioned, my strength was in design and, understanding what people are looking for. So my key role was just to be the creative director, like help with the website, help with the product packaging, help with, social media. Wherever people saw our brand, we needed to make sure we were leaving a great impression. So that was my role. However, the first thing I did when I joined was, let's see, I see that you don't have anything that shows your numbers, like, how much you're paying for your ingredients or your packaging materials or how long it takes you. So let me throw together a quick Excel sheet, to kind of capture all of these key numbers. Long story short, I found out that we were barely breaking even. So it kind of broke my heart because my wife is a hustler. So she was out there, pretty much running the entire operation from creating the product, selling the product, delivering the product, counting inventory, everything. Yeah. And that seems to be the case with a lot of the founders that we talk to today. So she had no time. And I want to caveat that is we all need to make time for those things, which is what we'll talk about, going forward. But she didn't have the bandwidth to put down her numbers and see how much her costs were and what was her return. So I had to have a very hard conversation with her. And I said, listen, so we have two decisions we can make. We can continue doing what we've been doing, and this business will be more of a hobby, or we can actually increase our prices and find ways that we can decrease our costs. If we decide to go the latter route, we're going to lose some customers, like most definitely, because we're going to have to increase our products to a point where our price to the point where we actually get a good and healthy profit margin. Yeah. So we did make that decision to switch to increasing our pricing. And at the same time, I knew that was a perfect time to do the rebranding also, so that we can make sure that that new perceived value was attached to that increased price. So after implementing that, our monthly revenue increased by 300%. Okay. So we knew we were onto something. When I first made that Excel sheet, I didn't even include the labor and the time it took to assemble these products, which is also a red flag. But as we kept going and building out this Excel sheet, we were able to solve that issue, and also like how we manage our inventory. So one of the big issues my wife had was she was either making her products at a commercial kitchen where she would rent a space, or she would do it with a cottage license at home. So like having enough space to store all of the different ingredients and materials, it just didn't exist.
Right.
So a lot of our orders that were prepared were made on demand, so we would have to say, okay, we have 10 orders today, and more than likely we would get to order number 2 or 3 and find out, oh, we don't have enough inventory on hand. So all that to say is this basic Excel sheet that I started back in, I think, 2017 really helped us out in the next 12 months of building that. And my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, she said to me, it wasn't Profit yet. It was just an Excel sheet. We had no idea it would be what it is today. And she said, this spreadsheet was, so valuable for us. Like, have you ever thought about making it into an application or a resource that other food founders can take value from? And I was like, wow, that never crossed my mind. So that kind of just sparked the flame to get to where we are today.
Yeah, planted that seed. Well,
Exactly.
I think, what your wife was doing or not doing is like so common. It's like prevalent, I guess we could say, in the industry, and I don't know her entire backstory, but sometimes you just start, you make something and you think, oh, well, you could buy a cupcake down the street for $2 a cupcake, so I should charge $2 for my cupcake. You're either comparing to a competitor, or I used to work for a chef. He made amazing food. It was all like local, sustainable, delicious, beautiful. Like, he would make a dish and he would walk it around the office and say, what would you pay for this? And that would be how the price would end up on the menu. And I think that, cooks and chefs are just so creative, and they, that is where they want to spend their time. That is where they want to, focus their energy. But at the end of the day, right, or the end of the month or end of the year, if you aren't making money doing this, the lifespan of your business is going to be very short, or a very difficult journey financially and even emotionally after a while to get through. So
Absolutely.
It's one of the most important things to do, but least often done. And not everyone is a spreadsheet nerd like you and I, who'd like, let me, please let me make a spreadsheet for you. Right.
Exactly.
I don't know. We have clients who are like, I did a back of the napkin, math, like that's better than nothing, but having something formalized that you can, and we'll talk about what your system does, but having something formalized that you can look back to, make adjustments to, update things like that is critical to
Absolutely.
long-term financial success.
Yep.
So, okay, so you've made this spreadsheet. She's planted the seed in your brain that like, maybe this is something that other people can use. What happens next? How do you turn a spreadsheet into a, software as a service, if you will?
So at the time, I was no longer, as I mentioned, I had moved on from the manufacturing company. But while I was helping my wife, I actually did start working at another place that was also a tech company. It was in the mortgage industry, had nothing to do with the previous or what I'm doing today. But I had the pleasure of working with another, what we call in the design industry, a user experience designer. And basically what their job is, and that term is somewhat new. It's almost like designing websites or applications, but a user experience designer, what they focus on is how can I make this software usable for someone who is 60 or 80 years old, who has no idea how to use technology. So user-friendly is a term that you'll hear most of the time. So I actually started creating some preliminary designs for Profit as a mobile application. So I got, once my wife gave me that idea, the design and passion just sparked in me. And I just started designing things, which in the tech industry is not the best way to start designing. What you want to do is, again, go out in the field, start talking to some people and ask how they do their things. But I was just super excited to do this. And because I designed that application, that actually got me into the door of this company where they had a user experience designer.
Okay.
So you can say I was getting paid to learn, which was
Awesome.
Incredible. I started to, build it out in a mobile direction, and then found out that wasn't the best way to go because there's so much data behind managing your numbers. I felt creating a desktop version of the software was the best thing to do. Obviously, my wife was my target audience. She was my persona that I can look at and said, here's all the struggles she has. So I'm going to build the solutions based off of this.
Yeah.
But also, how can I take that spreadsheet and actually get feedback now? So what I decided to do was say, hey, instead of me investing all my time and effort designing a fully functioning software, let me just take the same Excel sheet, or it was a Google sheet actually, that we've been using, and just share it with other food founders and see how it helps them solve their problems.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was I couldn't just give them my Google sheet. I had to make it user friendly. So I said, okay, this is how you do X, Y, and Z, or this is how you do this. And then what I did was partner with another food and beverage coach, and she kind of helped me share the spreadsheet, and people were willing to pay for it. So I said that was enough information for me to start thinking about how can I bring the actual software into fruition.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like I remember seeing the Google Sheets version, like on Instagram or something. Was it Profit then? Did it have the same name or no?
Yes, it did. Once I decided to share the Google Sheet, I did put an official name to it, which was Profit.
Yeah. I think that's such a great idea. As someone who is like also very into Excel spreadsheets, and, when I was a buyer, I had my own buying tool. I had my own recipe costing system. And because it was like nothing existed out there that like met my specific needs, or it was like insanely expensive, or it was too much. Like it did too many things that I didn't need it to do or want it to do, And so I would end up just sort of like putting something together on my own, again, because it's fun for people like us. But most of the founders that are listening to this are not like you and I. So, okay. So you've gotten customer feedback in terms of they're willing to pay, or they want to pay to continue to use this software. So then do you get to work developing it at that point?
Yeah, at that point, I was collecting feedback to say, okay, like how are people using this? In those early stages, it was about, okay, if I'm going to invest the money, what is the first functionality I need this software to be able to do? Because when you get into the tech industry, you can just get into designing all the bells and whistles, which is very expensive. But what you want to do is start with the basics. So, and all of this to say is I didn't have all this information when I started out, but in hindsight, this is all the things that I learned when starting a tech company. So the next step was, okay, I now have my foot in the door of a tech company. What I want to do is further my own desire to learn more about technology. So I actually started working with a company by the name of Quicken Loans, which most people know about. Today they're Rocket Mortgage, because they used to be part of Intuit, but they branched off from Intuit to be their own separate entity. So I got to learn just how tech teams work, working with designers, engineers, product managers, etc. So that really helped me to start designing what Profit could be like, and how do I prioritize, again, those functionalities that would be key from the launch of the product. Then I actually started working with a team in India just by doing some shopping of what does it even look like to hire an engineer. So all of that stuff was brand new to me, but it has been a journey since. So I started with a small engineering team in Delhi, India. So the original estimation of the project was 6 weeks. It took them 7 months.
I think 7 months still isn't that long considering what Profit does, but yeah, okay, 6 weeks to 7 months is quite a distance. Yeah.
But what that tells me is you understand how it should work better than they did. So I think it was just a misquotation of what the project actually was, because when you think about it, it's a lot of calculations in the background. So
Yeah.
my only guess is that they didn't realize it at the time. All that goes to say is I'm not working with that team anymore. I am now on my third engineering team,
Wow.
which seems to be working great. That's going really well.
That's great.
So after those 7 months, you have the product. You're like, yes, like I've been thinking about this for years. At that point, it was 3 or 4 years since the inception of my wife, putting that seed in my head. And I was like, now what do I do? And just the same issues that the food founder has, you have the same issues as a tech founder. And it's like, how do I market this?
Yeah.
So, my first idea was to do the same thing I did with the Profit Sheet, was to, partner with food and beverage coaches. And I think that's how you and I started connecting and getting to know each other. So that is why I am here today. So that was the next step.
And you've been continuing to work with teams, I would assume, to develop and improve and continue to create a tool that's really valuable for folks. Can you share with our listeners the major things that Prophit helps food founders and their teams to do in terms of costing and things like that?
Absolutely. First and foremost, what it inspired us to make Prophit into a software is to help those early to mid food founders understand exactly where their numbers are. Because after starting to do some research, just asking food founders, do you know how much it costs you to make that product? And most of the time, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's yes, but they make the same mistake of not thinking about the labor and the assembly time it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, our mission is to make sure that you are selling profitable goods, and Prophit helps you do that.
I love that.
And how the application actually does that is help you manage your ingredient costs. And so we divide it into ingredient and material costs. Ingredients is for the edible product. Materials cost is for the packaging. Now, what we don't solve right now is shipping. That's another monster entirely that we plan to solve for. But managing your ingredients and materials is first.
Yeah.
And the ingredients goes again into what are my recipe costs, and the materials go into what are my packaging costs.
Yeah. I want to pause here for a second because, we just so happen to be working on a presentation, like a joint presentation I'm going to be doing next week at the time that I'm recording this episode, not when it actually airs. But what I was asked to present on is like, what are like the 3 to 4 things that a founder should do or should know or consider in order to launch with financial confidence and the ability to scale, which feels like a very big question, right? But when you boil it down, the answers were very easy to come to. Number 1 is know the cost to produce your product, right? Number 2 is price your product so that it is profitable,
Exactly.
and then the conversation goes on from there. But if you don't have that step number 1, you can't do any of the other work. You can't be financially confident in your business. So this is really critical. And it's just awesome that there's now a tool that was built with, I'll say, the small, to mid-sized food founder in mind. It's so important.
Exactly. Because our philosophy is start profitable. Don't wait to be profitable. Start profitable.
Yes.
Unless you have an investor that is willing to lose money at the beginning because they know that you have access to suppliers and distributors where that cost is much lower than, starting out as a sole food founder, then by all means take that route. But start profitable, people. Please do.
I'm going to go ahead and push back and say, even if you have an investor, don't, I don't recommend that you be not profitable, but here's why, because things change, right? There is no guarantee that you're going to save any amount of money by the time you scale to a certain point. And I think we see that with tech companies. And I think we have absolutely seen that with food companies. We continue to see that with, like the Sweet Greens of the world, right? Like they've not been profitable, I don't think, to date. Tons of investment, tons of growth, and they've got a lot of money behind them. So yeah, they're able to stay in business. But I'm of the mindset of like, let's build sustainable businesses from the beginning.
I'm with you 100%.
And maybe put the millions of dollars that go into unprofitable businesses of all types to, I don't know, a better, thing for humanity than another food business. Just my opinion.
Yeah. And that's an issue for the food business and for the tech industry. I mean, just in the last year, there have been so many layoffs from some of the biggest tech companies. I'm sure you see it on LinkedIn. It's a travesty. So
yeah,
I'm with you 100%.
And quick shutdowns of food brands as well, which at the end of the day, that's the worst part. It's lost employment. It's lost sourcing from the farmers, right, who are growing sustainable food and hopefully, paying their employees a fair wage for the work that they do. So it's really a supply chain sort of disappointment, as well as the employees and the consumer. So yeah. Percy and I are
start
for
profitable.
profit. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second thing that we're trying to solve for is inventory management. Now, the example I brought up earlier of my wife is that she would be into making order number 2 or 3 out of 10 and find out that, oh, I need more inventory.
Yeah.
So what happens is either we're running to a local store to go pick up an ingredient. Sometimes that ingredient might not even be what we usually put in the product because we want to make sure that we honor the lead times that we give our customers. Because at the end of the day, if I can't ship a product out today that I plan to, then, I'm most likely going to have an unhappy customer because I set the expectation that they should receive it at this set date. And another aspect of our particular product was that it was very temperamental. It would melt. So we couldn't ship anything over the weekend because that added 2 extra days of non-shipping.
Yeah.
So in those cases, we had to remake orders. And I'm not talking about small orders, these orders range from anywhere between $300 to $1,600. And some of those orders, melted and we had to recreate them. And so all that to say is inventory management is key. We want to know we have everything in stock before we start, mass fulfillment. At the end of the day, thinking about profit and also inventory management, those 2 things help you save time and money.
Yeah.
And once you get the basis of just your profit, then you can start to make tweaks further to your assembly or your labor, like your production, like whatever means you use to manufacture. You can say, okay, I'm spending X amount of dollars here. How can I improve that system? Or how can I remove something from that system to, again, maximize my profit? So that's really what profit is made for.
Yeah. So many things are exciting about this. I think most of the listeners here know that when I say I was a buyer, it was for a large catering company here in LA. And there was a moment, we had this very archaic like method of keeping inventory or like doing orders at the end of the night, which was me walking around with a piece of scrap paper, looking up and down all the shelves and in all the refrigerators going, what do we not have? Right. And it always gave me anxiety, but that's like the way that it was always done. And so that was the way that I did it. And I failed to notice after, at the end of like a 10-hour day, that there was a gaping hole in the fridge where the case of butter used to be. And so then the morning when I came in and there was no butter in the delivery, I got an earful, not from my head chef, but from, I forget what his title was, but another chef, the leader of the kitchen. And I was mortified. I was like, I cannot believe that I didn't see that that's where the butter went. Because if there was like 1 pound of butter, I would have been like, oh, butter, that's not enough. But it was all gone. And it was like, that was it. And that's a symptom of bigger problems, right? Exactly. No system for people reporting when you're out of something, not a good system for keeping track of what should you have in-house and what do you need to make the production you have coming ahead. And at that day, I was like, that is it. I am not doing it this way anymore. And I made a very detailed sheet of like, what are we supposed to have here? And I could
Yep.
go through and check it all off. And I share that story because I think it doesn't matter if you're one or two people making products from your home with a cottage food license, or you're in a $1 million catering company, or anywhere in between. The
Yep.
issues exist. And without a good system, you're going to run into trouble. And when you run out of things, from soap to sponges to sugar to butter to eggs, you name it, running out to the store costs you money because it's time away from the core work that you or someone on your team is supposed to do. And it's going to cost you twice as much usually to buy
Yep.
that item. And
Yep.
then, as you said, it might not even be the same thing you would normally put into right. So it just
Exactly.
compounds on itself plus
Exactly.
it's also annoying as heck, right? You're like, I know I have to go out to the store. This is, stop what I'm doing. You got something in the
Yep.
oven. It's just a disaster. But beyond the annoyances, as I started to mention, is like there's the financial factor, and it kind of goes both ways, right? You don't want to have too much in your inventory that you're not using, tying up cash, and you
Hmm.
also don't want to run out of anything. So,
Yep.
can you give us some insights on this inventory piece, like, because it takes a little bit of work up front, right? To put this together. So what might a founder need to do to sort of get it set up in your system?
First thing they start to do is first input their facility expenses. So what
Mm,
that is whether they work at a commercial kitchen or at home, they have to say how much they're paying per hour to use that space. Now, if they're using a cottage license and they're like, I just pay my typical home rent, I'm not including that in the production of my products, there's still a disclaimer on our website. No, please make sure you put a cost here
right.
regardless, because what you don't want to do is outgrow your cottage license, move into a space, and now you're actually going to be losing money potentially because you
Mhm.
didn't take that cost into consideration.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. And also, how much does your time cost, or the person you're paying time cost? So those are the two key things we want to make sure that you input into Profit once you start. And then you get into adding all your ingredients and your materials. And while you're adding these things, you're putting how much you have of each item on
Mm,
hand. And then what we call in Profit is fulfillment, where you can say, okay, I need 100 of chocolate truffles, or I need 25 almond milk. I need to fulfill those items today. So how long is that going to take me? What ingredients do I need? What materials do I need? And our system will tell you everything that you need to fulfill all of those orders. So then you can see right there in the fulfillment table how much of each material you need and if you have it in stock or not.
I
And
love that.
instantly I can know, okay, I need to go get 10 of these or 5 of these, et cetera, et cetera. That's like the quickest way Profit does it today. Now, all that to say is we're still working on so many improvements on how we can even improve that further. AI is the big thing today, right?
Mm,
So although this doesn't exist today, is future state. I can tell Profit, okay, I need to make 10 of these. It'll say, okay, this is the best way to fulfill this because I know you have some other products over here that you're working on.
mm,
This, because you obviously you can do it one by one, but
yeah.
because the system knows, it says here you should actually combine them this way, and this is the quickest way to manufacture your products, which will actually help you save on your costs. So that's future state, but today it's very linear but very simple, and will help food founders today manage their inventory, so they will be certain that they're not missing anything when they're manufacturing their products.
Yeah. Can you do it for like, this is what I need to produce this week, for example, and then you can get your
Yeah.
full like weekly order. Yeah. I remember having to sit down with my chef and he would tell me everything we needed. And I was just like, this is too much manpower. This is too much time. Like, it shouldn't be working this way. And when
Yeah.
we went through our recipe costing process, and I'll actually dive into that a little bit more in a minute when we talk about how Profit works in that regard. But we were costing out all of our recipes. And I remember thinking, okay, I have everything I need here. If I can make a system that just tells me if you're making this, you need this, like this would literally save both of us hours every week. And we could both go home a whole lot earlier than we're able to go home now. And so, it was very simple in terms of how it worked, like very linearly, right? Here are all the things we need to make. But it was a game changer for our business because also he's a human being, as am I. And there was, bound to be a mistake in there. But when you've got it in a system and you can tell it, I need steak for 24 people and I need potatoes for this many people, and the system can calculate it for you. I mean, that's huge,
Exactly.
It's amazing. So when it comes to recipe costing, I think one of the biggest challenges or like roadblocks that I see for people like that they come up against is converting their 25 pounds of flour into a recipe, or like, you name it, broccoli. If you're doing something savory, right? Okay, I got a case of broccoli, but I use like a cup in my recipe. So is that something that you took into consideration in building Profit, and sort of how do you address that for folks?
Yep. So in Profit, we only take account weight, not fluid ounce. So that would be the only thing they would have to convert. However, because with weight, I can easily calculate what the numbers are down to, the smallest decimal.
Yeah.
So that was very important. And it actually took us a while to kind of decide on that. Will we include both volume and weight? And we decided on weight. And our standard measurement is grams. So you can use pounds, you can use ounces, you can use anything. Profit will do the auto calculation for you to convert it to grams.
Yeah.
So that you can see how much everything is costing you per gram.
That's great.
So that was super important for us.
So let's say somebody has like a gallon of vinegar. Does your system know what a gallon of vinegar would weigh? Or do you have to kind of hopefully go to the label and it has a weight on it?
Yep. So typically you'll just look at the weight that the supplier provides with their products, and then you would enter what you see onto the software. And then you can either keep it at gallons or ounces, however you want to, like whatever your standard method of weighing out those items. But our standard is grams. So it will convert that gallon into grams eventually.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
One of the big things we talk about with folks, because we do a little bit of recipe costing, as you and I talked about offline, for our customers. And we'll get recipes where it's like a cup of this or a half a cup of that, or like a deli cup of this or a deli cup of that. And so it's so important to convert your recipes to weight, both for consistency's sake. Number one, it reduces waste. It improves consistency, but also because then you can have that true conversion from how much did I pay for, the case of product, and then boil it down into how much was the cost of what I put into a batch and then a unit.
Yep. And I'm happy you said waste also, because Profit also helps you with your waste. For example, if I have like a gallon of peanut butter or almond butter, you know how sticky that stuff is. So I'm not getting everything out of the container.
Not unless you're doing it like with your finger, but then you're eating it. So it's not technically going into your product.
Exactly. Earlier, you said something about a small business versus a $1 million catering company. So I did some field research of this company where they manufacture like different alcoholic juices for bars and restaurants. And I spoke to them about 4 weeks ago. And one of the things I found so interesting is they're buying a lot of produce because they're using natural fruit for their different flavors.
Okay.
Is the waste with the orange peels, the banana peels, all the different fruits. So they actually haul about 2,000 pounds of just peels a day.
Wow.
And they're not even accounting for any of this stuff. And they're a 6-figure a month company. Wow. So you think like, oh, wow, this company is making so much money. They for sure have the right operating procedures in place, right? But no, that's not the case. Companies are suffering from the top to the bottom.
Yeah.
So
I think
all that to say is waste is super important.
I think that's such a great point too. In a recent episode, I talked about like the three core functions of a business, one being like sales and marketing, one being your operations, and the third being the finance part of the business. And you need to be operating with all three functions like on all cylinders, right? Every one of them
Yes,
being like fully informed, because if you're not, you can have $1 million coming in the door and 1,000,001 going out, right?
exactly.
And a hidden, if you will, place that can be happening is in terms of waste, or not accounting for waste and understanding that, which is really interesting. We see that a lot with like proteins, for example. I work mostly on the savory side of things all of my career, but if you have a piece of chicken and it weighs, it's 8 ounces in the oven, and then it's, you're serving 8 ounces
Hmm.
finished, that those 8 ounces are not equal, right? Like you started
Yeah,
out with more than 8 ounces to get 8 ounces on the plate. And if you aren't accounting for that, you've undercharged for your product.
yeah,
You misunderstanding your costs. And that's something that's important to know too. And I want to say, because I think you agree with this too, it's never too late to do this work. So if you're
never.
someone who has some of your costs, or you're not factoring in your labor, or you did back the napkin, or you did this when you started your business and you haven't done it since, there's no time like the present to get into your numbers and to understand, is this working for me, or do I need to change some things?
Yeah, yeah. Like today is the day, right?
Yeah.
Of manner, like of calculating these costs, because unfortunately there's no quick way to calculate the time it takes to assemble these things. They have
Mm-hmm.
to be done, or you
Yeah.
won't know. Maybe you can get away with, not calculating the time for a product that is similar to something you offer that you've already accounted for that time. Maybe you can get away with that, but there's no shortcut around like trying to figure out how much time does it takes me or take my team to manufacture this product.
Yeah. One of the services that we offer is called the profit assessment. And one of the reasons I love that so much is because it lays out our cost of goods for us. And so we can see if our ingredients and packaging are above where we want them to be as a percentage of our revenue. Same with labor, right? Like, and those are the actual hard numbers. But
Hmm.
an interesting thing is, like, from there, you then have to go do the work and dive in, right? So let's say you've got a 50% ingredient cost, which is too high,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You then need to have a place and the ability to go in and look at all of your products and all of the cost to make them. Because a mistake that I had seen people making earlier on in my career was, if your food costs are too high, you just raise the price of everything.
Yep.
And that can be detrimental, because you can be pricing someone out of a product that didn't need to have the price
Hmm.
raised. And a
Hmm.
great example of this is when I was working for the caterer, they did this like a taco bar, like sort of buffet type of thing. It was our number one bestseller. And we knew that we needed to improve our food costs. But rather than just raising the price of anything, I dove in and started costing everything out. When I tell you that the tacos that we were selling at this, local avocados, organic chicken, like all of this stuff, they were less than the price of a Taco Bell taco. It
Wow.
was wild. And so it wasn't that we had to raise the price of everything on our menu. We had to identify, there was like maybe a handful of things that sold like crazy that were just killing us in
Yeah.
terms of profit margin.
Yeah.
And we were selling so much of them that it was really having an impact. So in that case, we raised the price a little bit and we got rid of a couple of things. Okay, we're not going to give you guac automatically. You can add guac to it, right? We're not going to throw
Yep.
in chips, but you can add chips as like an extra item. So it was a combination of, let's pare this down to its core product, and then let's increase the price to what is appropriate for that product. I think if we had, and people responded really well to that. They were like, yeah, we'll totally still pay this price because
Yeah.
this is still a good deal. You know what I mean? But if we had raised the price of everything, we definitely would have lost some customers. I will add though, that there was 2 products that when we did the pricing for them, it was like, no one is going to pay what we need them to pay for this. They were like very olive oil heavy, like dips. And it was like, we can't charge $200 for like this dip platter, So we just removed those from our menu. Right. And
Yep.
there's also some elements of that too.
Yeah. Earlier I mentioned how after raising our prices, we did lose some customers, but the silver lining and actually the value add is that we got more qualified customers. So we kind of like segmented certain customers and said, this is no longer our demographic. If we're going to make money, we have to, target a different type of clientele.
Yeah.
And just making that shift helped out a lot. But all that to say is you kind of talked about having those pillars of sales, finances, and I forget the third one.
Operations.
But it's like, if you're going to make that change, you need to make sure those other 2 pillars outside of financing are along for the ride.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We rebranded and made sure that the image fit the price, which it did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amazing. So Profit is available for use. I did a demo. I might be a couple months ago now.
It might be 2 months ago. Yeah.
But I did a demo and, I always like to look into things and ask the question, will this work for our clients? Does this align with what we're trying to do in the industry, which is to build financial confidence and to, help set founders up for success long-term. And, I do believe that Profit is doing that. And I think it's a testament to your approach, identifying what it is that founders need and where they need help, and also making it a system that's as easy as possible. As I noted before, it takes work. It is work, right? You can't snap your fingers and have everything in the system, but this is work that is worth doing because it's massively impactful to your profitability and your financial sustainability as a business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have a link to Profit in the show notes. I believe there's a 14 or 15 day free trial. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. So it's going to be a 14-day free trial. Your users will also get access at 30% off, whether they choose a monthly, quarterly, or annual subscription. Obviously, we hope you guys choose the annual subscription because it's definitely worth every penny. Again, Profit helps you save time and money. Like I mentioned before, it changed our business, from night to day. I'm so happy to offer that to your audience. And what I get from this is like just seeing people to start using it. And then again, doing that, gathering that feedback from them and saying like, okay, this is solving your problem, or this is not solving your problem. So how can we continue to make improvements to the system to make sure it is working for all food founders and not just scratching the surface for certain demographics? So yeah, really looking forward to working with everyone who comes on board.
That's awesome. We really appreciate that you're offering that discount to folks. I think, when we work with clients, something that we require of them is their product costs, their ingredient costs, and understanding of their labor, and having the ability to have a tool, especially at a discounted rate, for them to do it and not just do it once, but to stay on top of it, keep on it and to utilize it to make better decisions and feel more confident about their business is really, really, really awesome. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And we don't have a date yet, but Percy's going to be joining us inside the Good Food CFO community for a demo of Profit, which we're super excited about. So if you're the kind of person who likes to see how something works, you can check it out online via the link, but you can also come to the community, ask Percy questions, watch the demo that he'll do, and learn more there.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. In the meantime, Percy, where can folks follow you on social media or connect with you directly if they're interested in doing that?
Yeah, first you can find Profit at prophitapp.com. That's PROPHITAPP.com. And you can find me My personal Instagram handle is just Percy Swint. That's spelled PercySwint. But you can also follow Prophit on Instagram and Facebook at Prophit Tech. And tech is just spelled TECH.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Percy. I'm super excited for folks to learn more about this app and get on board. And so I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm so super excited to talk more shop with you. As you know, we're both geeks when it comes to numbers. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah. For more content and connection with good food founders and industry experts, join us inside the Good Food CFO community. Visit thegoodfoodcfo.com/join to learn more. Thank you, as always, for spending time with us here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share your thoughts with your founder friends and on social, and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. That's the #1 way to help more good food founders find the show. I'll be back with a brand new episode in 2 weeks.